Greetings, people. This is Leaving the United States, Part 4. A little bit different than the first 3 parts. I'm going to be talking a little bit about additional resources, adding a little bit to my last video, and then I'm going to tell a few stories about what it's like to live in Europe and why we think that we made the right choice, and it'll break the mold a little bit, not so much as a how-to, as an addendum, and a story or two. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel, and if you are so inclined, share it to someone you think might enjoy it as well. So let's get started. I talked last time about going on the internet using Google and whatever search engine you do enjoy, and Googling real estate agencies and going through real estate agencies and how to deal with them. I also talked about Le Bon Coin, which is France's answer to Craigslist. There are a couple of resources that I probably should have added to that as well. One is Facebook. Now, I know there are people that really don't like Facebook, and some of my best friends are not on Facebook, and that's just fine. But the fact of the matter is that if you are judicious, and if you don't mind the fact that the world is going to know exactly what you're thinking all the time, every day, because if you're on Facebook, you're part of that web of internet that means that you're no longer public, you're no longer private, that you're now public. But if you can deal with that, Facebook is an interesting topic, isn't it? If you can deal with being on Facebook, you'll find that there is a great deal on Facebook that you can use as resources. There are sites that literally post houses for sale in France for less than 50,000 euros, which is about $55,000. Most of them require a great deal of work. Some of them don't require any work at all, but are in odd little pockets of the country that may be very rural and not within a town where services are available. But there are houses in France that are livable for under 50,000 euros. There are groups like the Languedoc page, which talks about the Languedoc. There are pages like English speakers in the Languedoc. There are ladies in the Languedoc. There are all sorts of Facebook groups, and you search for groups the way you would search on the internet for internet sites. You just find the ones that work. A New Life in France is one. There's one that's sponsored by a group called Renaissance, called Think. And I want to talk a little bit about Renaissance as well. And I think there's another group of which I'm aware called pleasehelp.fr. But besides the internet resources, there are also personal resources that you can go to that are sort of like personal valets. Renaissance is one, pleasehelp.fr is another. And these are organizations that will walk you through the process of moving to France. And in some cases, they will do the real estate help you with the real estate transactions. In some cases, they will help you with your taxes. And they will take you on tours. They will provide you with lists of properties or lists of desirable towns and so on and so forth. In both cases, in both talking about Facebook and in talking about these groups like Renaissance and pleasehelp.fr, in both of these cases, I would recommend taking their advice with grains of salt. Facebook, certainly. I'm involved in several groups in Facebook, and I do follow them, and it is not rare that I feel the necessity to correct misinformation that's provided, or information that is not as clear as it should be, because the rules are different for people who are living in countries within the EU and people like Americans who are considered third-party countries who don't have EU rights. So particularly English speakers who are on the internet and looking to find advice on Facebook, you have to be very careful to find out whether or not you're getting that advice from a Brit who is used to the rules as they relate to the UK when and if it continues to be a member of the European Union, or whether you're an American or from another third-party country like Canada, that for which the rules are different. So my suggestion is always don't take your advice from only one source. Use several sources and take all of your advice with grains of salt, even what I'm saying to you, because who the hell knows who I am. Okay, now, also I wanted to talk a little bit about why we have sort of proven to ourselves that this was the place where we should be during our active retirement years. Uh, Two stories. The first is my sister-in-law, who lives in the United States, uh, and whose family comes from New Orleans, was in New Orleans, was in a cemetery, and tracked down what she believed to be the death date of her great-great-grandfather, who died in New Orleans in something like 1886. And she traced the family back, and she knew his name, and she knew the name of his wife, who was a German. Great-grandpa was Swiss, and his wife was German, and we knew the wife's name as Dora Schneider, or Dorothea Schneider. So Connie has always wanted to come, now that we're sort of ensconced in Europe, has always wanted to come and go to Switzerland and research the family. And she convinced us to do that not too long ago. Switzerland from where we live is a 10-hour drive, but we're Americans and we can deal with it. I'm getting a little old for those drives, but I did do 10 hours there and back without stopping. Maybe next time we'll break up the trip into 2 nights. But in any event, we went to the little town in Switzerland where we thought that Kathy's great-great-grandfather emigrated from. And we had previously written translated emails into German for the church and for the town that we thought he came from. And in each case, we got shunted from one place to another. We don't have records that go back very far. You need to go to this place. You need to go to that place. So that by the time we got to Switzerland, even though we'd made an attempt to find out where we might trace Kathy's and her sister's family tree, we were really lost. All that we knew was that there was a possibility that we might get help from the canton offices. A canton is like a county or a state, maybe, in Switzerland. The canton office in Glarus was the name of the town, and both the canton. If we went to the canton offices in Glarus, maybe we'd get some help. And as we were walking down the main street in Glarus one day, there was the canton office, and I walked in, and the first person that came across spoke English, knew what I was asking for, and took us outside and pointed to the library in town, which has an archive. And we walked into the library and worked our way into the locked archive and spoke to the archivist, who made us put on white cotton gloves and pulled out the handwritten ledgers about the genealogy of various families in Switzerland. And eventually this guy figured out, even though we had an incorrect birth date, figured out what might be the birth date and birthplace of the great-great-grandfather and found his name. And we know it's him because he's listed in the archive as having died in New Orleans, Louisiana in 1886, and his wife is listed as Dorothea, I think, Schneider. We thought Dora would be a Dorothea. Anyway, it was very clear that this was the right person. So the archivist started dating back generation to generation to generation. And he got back to the 17th century, which he thought was pretty normal. It's quite normal for people to be able to trace themselves back to the 17th century, but they went back to the 16th century and eventually the 15th century, and they got back to a great many times grandfather in 1486, I believe, whose wife's name was not listed, but he was listed. So the family line goes directly back from this emigre from Switzerland to New Orleans, goes all the way back to 1484, 1486 in a small town in the Alps in Switzerland. And we would never have known that. We would never found that out unless we were close enough to it to go to it and find out. And we did. And it was a great trip. We spent several days. It happened to be the day of the first, one of the nights happened to be the first night of snow in the Alps. And so we woke up in the morning, and what had been actually cloud-covered peaks were now snow-covered peaks. It was a beautiful morning. The second story I'm going to tell you is one of the things that we do in order to enjoy our time here in the south of France. And we have very good friends here who gave us advice very early on and said, you're living in the south of France. You may think it's paradise, but you need a vacation every once in a while, even from paradise. Take 2 or 3 days, go somewhere else, spend some time, enjoy yourselves. And we took that as good advice. And we have instituted what we call mystery vacations. And my wife, who trusts me, Kathy trusts me, after 47 years, it makes sense that she trusts me. And I pick a place, and I make the reservations, and choose the accommodations, and make reservations for meals, and figure out what we're going to do pretty much every day that we're going to be there. And when the day comes, all that I tell her is what the weather's going to be like and whether or not she needs to bring formal or completely informal clothes. And that's all that she knows until we get in the car. And the first mystery vacation was in Alba, Italy for the International White Truffle Festival. And the most recent one, just this past month, was in San Sebastian, Donostia, Spain, one of the great foodie capitals of the world. And we ate our way through San Sebastian, Donostia, and had a great time. And the point is, it's a 5-hour drive away. It's in another country, completely different cuisine, completely different language, and just a great time. So when we said, I believe perhaps at the beginning of the first video in this series, that what we wanted to do in our active retirement years was travel, and where we wanted to travel was Europe, just this last month and a half, 2 months, going from the south of France to Switzerland to trace our family back to the 15th century, or my wife's family back to the 15th century, and traveling all the way to Spain, from the Mediterranean in the south of France to the Spanish coast on the Atlantic, to eat a completely different cuisine in a completely different country with a completely different language, and having a wonderful time over the course of 4 days and 3 nights, is why we're in France and why we've moved to Europe. The opportunity to do that with any time that we chose. Oh, there's a fly or something in the background, isn't there? Well, if you can see that, you've got a pretty good resolution on your screen, and I think it's probably time for me. Oh, and there, my cat just got it. It was a moth, and my cat just got the moth. Well, I guess moths are good food for cats, not for me. Hope you enjoyed this video. Remember, if you did enjoy it, please like it and subscribe to my channel, and share it with a friend if you think it would be helpful. From me and from my cat Sylvie, have a good day.